When I started keto, I expected a few things: weight loss, better blood work, maybe more energy. What I didn't expect was that it would change how my entire body functions. My palate changed, my joint inflammation dropped, and my skin improved. And even my gout, which used to cause severe flare ups, became manageable. None of that was on my radar. It was like watching a movie where the twist at the end makes you rethink the entire story. And that's what keto ended up being for me. And once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. Now, most people talk about keto like it's a weight loss strategy. So you lose some fat, you improve your numbers. But what almost nobody talks about is what happens after your metabolism and your hormones stabilize. That is where the real changes begin. And one of the biggest surprises for me was something that most people never expect. My palate completely changed. The first thing I noticed was my palate changing. Not just my taste for food, my entire palate. Things like wine became more complex, whiskey became nuanced. And here's what I mean by that. Both wine and whiskey contain chemical compounds that mirror familiar flavors. In bourbon, you might detect caramel or cooked corn, well, because bourbon is made from corn. In wine, you might pick up notes of berries, earth, or even mushrooms because of compounds produced during fermentation and aging. And once my palate shifted, I started noticing those nuances much more clearly. But it didn't stop there. Coffee changed too, and that surprised me. See, before keto, coffee was mostly just fuel. Caffeine, my morning routine. But once my palate recalibrated, I started noticing the differences between coffee roasts. Lighter roasts became much more interesting to me. More earthy, more nutty, more complex. Very similar to the earthy flavor profiles I tend to enjoy in wine. And once you start noticing those types of differences, you stop treating things like coffee like just another drink. See, your palate wakes up. It wasn't dramatic, but it was precise. Now, at the same time, something else happened. Rice itself became bland. Pasta became bland. Potatoes became bland. And that realization hit me pretty quickly. Those foods are not flavorful on their own. They are vehicles. They carry sauces, oils, sugars, toppings. And once your palate recalibrates, it becomes obvious. And when you see it, you stop craving them the same way. See, that wasn't just awareness. That was me learning how my body reacts to certain foods. Then fruit started tasting like candy. Bananas, mangoes, apples, all extremely sweet. And that's when something clicked, right? Many modern fruits have been selectively bred to be much sweeter than their historical versions. And once my palate became much more sensitive, that sweetness in that food stood out immediately. Now you compare that to berries. Berries by themselves are naturally lower glycemic, but they still taste very sweet to me, sometimes intensely sweet. But they don't hit the same way bananas or mangoes do. See, once your metabolism stabilizes, that contrast becomes obvious. Here is the thing about inflammation. If it isn't acute, you often realize you're living with it. My back acne faded. And if you're a Gen X guy, you probably know the joke about wives helping with that. Let's just say that's not really a thing in my house anymore. Other things, my feet and my ankles used to swell up. Long days in my truck, in and out, walking on concrete. Then the edema dropped off significantly. See, that's inflammation going down. Now, my knees used to hurt constantly, getting in and out of a truck, moving freight. I thought that was just normal life. Now, they're sore from training, and that's different. See, soreness from adaptation is growth. Pain from inflammation is deterioration, and that difference matters. And then there was gout. Yeah, gout. If you've never had it, it's hard to explain. For me, it felt like someone took a red hot needle or a sharp poker and drove it into the big knuckle of my toe, of my big toe on my left foot. And then they took that needle and twisted it. The burning, sharp, and it was constant. My joint would swell. It would turn red. If you touched it, it was hot to the touch. So much so, at night, I couldn't even let the sheet rest on my big toe. I'd have to stick my foot out from underneath the covers because even the weight of the fabric hurt. And yet I still had to work. Again, climbing in and out of the truck, moving freight, putting pressure through that foot. It's not heroic, but it was just reality. See, you don't feel tough when you've got gout. You feel irritated, exhausted. I was always on edge. And here's the thing, it's because that chronic pain wears you down. Now here, keto though didn't cure it, but it reduced the frequency enough that I could finally identify patterns, okay? For me, asparagus, almost an immediate flare within 12 hours. Broccoli, and I love broccoli, but it was a slow accumulation of eating broccoli over those days. And here's the thing, once I could predict it, I could control it. And control is different than endurance. Endurance is surviving the pain. Control is preventing it. And for me, that changed everything. So why does this happen? Here's the simple version. High sugar and refined carbohydrates keep insulin elevated. Chronically elevated insulin promotes inflammation. And chronic inflammation affects your joints, your skin, water retention, uric acid handling, pain sensitivity. See, when carbs drop though, insulin drops. And when insulin drops, those inflammation markers, they often drop as well. Your metabolism stabilizes. Your hormones stabilize. And systems that were constantly irritated finally calm down. That's not magic. That's physiology. Now, this next part isn't about blaming doctors. But today's healthcare system is very good at treating problems. It's not built to fully educate every patient about metabolic physiology or metabolic dysfunction in a short 15-minute appointment. See, I didn't learn this from one conversation. I learned it over time by paying attention to my own body, by listening to experts in the field, by reading, by testing. I became my own case study. I became my own N equals 1. Now, here's the real twist. Keto didn't just change my body. It changed my metabolic awareness. I now understand what inflames me. I understand what stabilizes me. Gentlemen, that's control. And control brings freedom. freedom to show up stronger for my wife, freedom to be present with my family, freedom to live instead of constantly managing symptoms. Gentlemen, that's real freedom. And once you experience that, you cannot go back to not knowing. If this video has encouraged you that to explore a ketogenic or carnivore lifestyle, please comment down below. Let me know if you've had any other unusual changes on keto or carnivore that you weren't expecting. Thank you very much for being here. I appreciate it. Subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and let people know, let other men know that you can change, and it will be for the better. God bless. We'll see you next time.